Fuel's on both. This is open. 1700. Left mag. Both. Right mag. Both. RP. Color. Suction. That's set. That's set. Rockingham County is currently 1822 Charlie, departing runway 31, Rockingham. Rockingham County is currently 1822 Charlie, departing to the west, Rockingham. Traffic 09 Bravo, 10 minutes of jumpers away over Rowan, 10 minutes, Rowan.
Lots of stuff between us and the coast.
Those aren't mountains?
No, those aren't mountains. But they look like just stuff that's spawned up because of the heat and it'll be gone by sunset.
Let's see if we can listen to a podcast.
Okay.
Welcome, folks, to Uncontrolled Airspace, the General Aviation Podcast. This is Pilot Jim G, bringing you episode 384, Foxtrot.
Foxtrot, Foxtrot, Foxtrot.
But I can't dance.
With my two good friends, Jeb.
Yay!
And Dave.
Here again, and here again beside myself.
You are too perky in the morning, Dave.
Oh yeah, I'm just bouncing all over the place today. It's the morning after the night before in the tie-down party, and no ill effects from consumption, but starting to feel the effects of lack of sleep. That's real prominent in my life.
I think there's a campground full of people who share that particular affliction. I think, and for our listeners who had to miss our tie-down appreciation party, which is a fan appreciation party, really, we had close to 80 people there. So we encourage you all to come again if you can.
We had 80 people, some regulars at the party, some regulars at Oshkosh, some new people that first-timers for the tie-down party, some people who were first-timers for Oshkosh. So it was a good time. We had live music. We had all kinds of interesting. Santa Claus was there. People from all over the world, literally. And it's always very humbling for me. I'm sure for Dave and Jack. how people turn out for this and how people keep in touch with us. And it's very humbling, very appreciated.
Fortunately, we didn't get any shots of Santa on the Ripon arrival, but boy, I've got fantasies of that.
You gotta wait for December for that.
In terms of people coming, Santa and others, we were talking earlier about noticing there's a little, looks like a bump in attendance. Camp Scholler, I noticed, is full all the way out to the highway, which usually there's always a big empty field way out there. But as far as you could see this year, you've got campers. And Dave, you were down at Ultralights, and you've said...
Well, I flew out of Ultralight Sunday night in the Super Stol XL, and one of the things I was able to notice from the air was that they'd opened up new areas and extended Scholler's parking space for RVs and motorhomes farther south into acreage they'd never opened up before. Sorry about repeating something I said in a prior daily, but I'm still stunned by it.
Jeb, your airplane is not quite in Fond du Lac, but close there too.
I think if I called a cab from my airplane to get to Fond du Lac, I could do that without any extra surcharges.
And it'll probably only be a $5 fare.
Yeah. I'll find out exactly where it is in a little bit.
For our listeners who haven't been here to Oshkosh Whitman Regional Airport, from the north end to the south end is about 2 miles, having walked it myself a few times. It's a big airport.
Well, runway 3618 is 9,000 feet. And there's a lot of airport north of the runway. There's a lot of parking south of the runway. So you do the math.
And it's about a mile and a half east to west along the North 40 side, and both sides of the runway are filled with aircraft campers. So it filled up more and faster this year than I've seen it in probably a decade.
I can confirm that. Obviously, I had not so much trouble getting in, but trouble figuring out where I wanted to park and camp. There are some holes I noticed yesterday in the North 40, and there are probably more holes today. But today being Friday and the weekend coming up, there's going to be another influx. There will be space if you're listening to my voice and you're planning on trying to sneak in for the weekend. Come on down. There'll be plenty of things to do. There's plenty of places to park and camp and whatnot. But it is crowded, and you just be prepared.
And if you come today or early tomorrow, you'll be here in time for the second night air show on Saturday night. And that's usually a bigger deal than the one on Wednesday. So, lots of vendors with lots of new stuff and lots of the old stuff. And if you can't find what you want here, they don't make it yet.
Yeah, I managed to damage my wallet a bit in one of the vendor exhibits the other day, so I'm familiar with the concept, but I guess I'm keeping AirVenture in business by buying stuff. Actually, it worked out well for me. My A&P mechanic who maintains my plane is here on the field, and we were talking about an ignition module upgrade for my airplane. It turns out the vendor who supplies it is here, had it in stock, walked in, bought it, went back to my mechanic, and I said, I've got it, it's in my car. We'll get to it the next time I'm in the shop with you. So that's what the convenience of a show like this is.
Smart thinking. Smart thinking.
And Jeb, as you mentioned, today's Friday, and you're thinking about perhaps possibly having to leave this wonderful experience.
I am. I do have to get back to Florida and start getting some work done for next week. Plan A is to try to bug out here around noon, as is my wont. Stop in Indiana for some cheap gas and motor on down to Athens, Georgia. I've made a tactical decision in my flying as of last Tuesday when I arrived Oshkosh. I ain't doing Oshkosh to Sarasota in the same day anymore. So I'm gonna overnight in Athens, which is my old alma mater, and try to hook up with some old friends of mine, college roommate, high school buddy, and just kind of say hello to them and listen to some good tunes downtown Athens, and maybe have an alcoholic beverage or two, and kind of take it easy and get a real shower in a real bed, and motor on home to Sarasota tomorrow.
This is a good point in general. You know, when we were younger, we did all-night car rides. When we were young pilots, we did long rides in the plane. When we're young motorcyclists, we do long motorcycle rides. As we age, and many of our friends in the pilot community are doing exactly that, beats the alternative, as they say, we start thinking about taking more breaks.
I spent 8 hours in the airplane on Tuesday, and thanks to 20 knots on the nose all the way and a lot of weather, it was a long day. I wasn't unsafe, I wasn't dangerous, but I was tired at the end of it. And I'm just getting a little bit too old for that. I used to do, I've done, as Dave well knows, I've done Oshkosh to Wichita to Manassas in the same day after the show. I've done Scottsdale, Arizona to Manassas, Virginia in one day. Not associated with Oshkosh, of course. I've made my bones in long distance flying. I don't need to prove anything. The only thing I really need to do is make sure I'm in good shape at the end of the day. And
we want you back home safe.
There's never been a danger of any safety issues or anything like that. Fatigue is fatigue, and as long as you recognize it, and I'm not going to be shooting an approach to 200.5 mile at the end of one of those days. If the weather's scuzzy, I'm not going to go in the first place, and I'm certainly not going to push it when I'm fatigued. But I don't want to be fatigued in the first place. I don't want to have the challenge of having to make the decision of whether to push things. So I'm going to start breaking up these trips, and today's the first time.
This is
One of our other
like
listeners is a long-distance traveler, well known to some of you who are in our forums, Champ Guy. And Champ Guy is here this year,
muggy,
as he has been for the last several. He flies a 90 horsepower Champ across the Rockies from the West Coast into Oshkosh.
And for, that was in the 175, for hours, there was no features to look at. The only thing you could see is down, and not actually as far out as we can now.
Huh.
But just down, and it was, you could see down. But from a couple of thousand feet above the ground to 6,000 feet or more. Probably more, because I didn't even try to go over it. It was just featureless ahead. Too hazy to see any kind of landscape. So I just kept all the lights blinking and kept motoring on. It was no doubt that I had three miles visibility at an angle.
Yeah.
So I must have had it straight ahead. Just that I couldn't see anything beyond that. I didn't mean to interrupt that. It was interesting.
That must be 121.
And back.
Keep it going.
And we had a chance to talk with him last night after the tie-down party about that experience. And here's what he had to say. This is Pilot Jim G, and I have the pleasure this evening of speaking with a longtime friend of the podcast, Champ Guy. Good evening.
Good evening to everybody.
You've been active in our in the UCAP forums, meeting a lot of people. And how long have you been hanging out there?
I'm not even sure now. It's been a long time, 6-8 years.
And have you met many of the people from the forums live and in person?
I meet them at Oshkosh, and it's a wonderful place.
So we want to get people active in the UCAP forums if you're a listener, right?
I think it would be a lot of fun if more people would get involved, tell about what they're doing. We have such an opportunity to, with our flying, to do stuff and go places And people, if we shared what we're doing more, then more people would probably feel comfortable doing more themselves.
In terms of as you say, going places, one of the places you go, because here we are at Oshkosh, is Oshkosh. And Rick and Champ Guy, how do you get here?
I'm fortunate in being able to take a 2-week vacation, and it works out very, very well for me. I get 2 weeks out of town and travel cross country. People don't understand. I think a lot of people don't understand that you can take a small plane, and not an inexpensive, relatively inexpensive plane, and you really can just go for it and travel. You have to be careful with the weather, of course, and sometimes you don't fly. But then you do something else for the day, and the next day the weather's probably better. So it's very, very doable without getting ridiculously expensive or high-tech or fast. Planes can be very, very affordable and good for you.
For our listeners who may not be experts on the Aeronca Champ, just give us a brief description of what your airplane looks like, feels like, and flies like.
Well, the Champ is a very, very forgiving plane. The airfoil is not designed to fly fast. It's designed to be forgiving, so it's got a very gentle stall at a speed way below anything we ever fly it at. If you are on short final and you want to maneuver over to a parallel runway or something, it does it very nicely. It's a fun, easy, simple plane to fly, forgiving, and as airplanes go, a very, very safe airplane.
Now it's a 2-seat airplane, high wing, light. Some might say a little on the small side, but you come from Oregon, is that correct?
Yes, Oregon. That's part of why I have the plane and keep it, is to be able to fly it here. With my Champ has 90 horsepower. A lot of them are only 65. The 85 or the 90 will get you over the mountains at 10,000 feet when that's appropriate. But most of the way from Cutbank, Montana, all the way across the plains and the Badlands, and then all the farmland of the Midwest, I'm at 1,000 to 1,500 feet, and I get to look into people's backyards and see beautiful, clean, well-tended. It amazes me how beautiful this country is when you look down on it like this. And there are small airports with card-lock gas at reasonable intervals. I seldom fly over 2 hours at a single hop.
And you load your camping gear in the Champ, and you get here with your tent, and you set the tent up next to the airplane. You've done this for a few years. What's that like? Why is that worth taking a vacation to fly all the way out here to Wisconsin to just set up a tent and camp next to the airplane?
Some would think I'm crazy, but this is an unusual crowd. The aviation crowd is a crowd that has learned to fly, to take responsibility. You have to be responsible for yourself if you're going to fly a plane. When you get here, you're amongst a group of people that's 800,000 people show up here, and you look around and there's no trash on the ground. That tells you something about who's here.
What do you have for your winter
tells you about
loft?
the quality of the people that are here, and I enjoy camping amongst a crowd of this quality. And people, you meet people, you can talk. It's a wonderful experience for a pilot to be amongst a bunch of other pilots. I don't know how to explain it. You really have to do it, to experience it, and it's doable, and it makes a valuable contribution to your life to learn and to be responsible for what you do every day. As pilots, we do see that people screw up from time to time, and each time you see that happen, it reminds you,
6 and 9,
I'm not going
I
to do
have
that to
80
my
degrees
family.
at
I
11
am going
knots,
to be
70
responsible
at
in how I
10,
fly.
50
Part of the
degrees at
experience.
14.
Not sure anybody could have said it better. Champ Guy, thanks so much for talking with the Uncontrolled Airspace podcast. We're delighted to have you as a longtime listener and active member of the forum.
Thank you very much.
Well, thanks, Champ Guy, for that excellent report. It was great to catch up with you, and we'll talk in the forums as we're not together in person.
And it's always a pleasure to see Champ Guy at the tie-down parties and see him around the site and
the more it'll line up
talk about
behind us.
airplanes and talk about flying champs and that kind of thing. So tailwinds, my friend, and until next year.
And that
I want one of
9,000
those
is higher than
coffee
both
mugs
the
that
6
he
and
made
the
out of
12.
his old Spar.
I had an experience here that I wanted to tell you guys about the day before yesterday. EAA has set up a pilot proficiency center with some support from Redbird, the makers of a very fancy little simulator device that they sell to flight schools. And I was able to get in there for a VFR session. They offered VFR and IFR sessions. And I was able to get in there for a half-hour, 45-minute VFR session with Robert Mark from the Jetwine blog, who many of you know, who also appears on the Airplane Geeks podcast. And what they've done this year, and this is free, and we're hoping it'll do it next year for those who are listening after the show. Free, walk in, sign up, you'll be signed an instructor, and they have 7 different scenarios: short field, backcountry, crosswinds, and even an aircraft carrier landing, for those who haven't tried it yet.
Nothing I've ever owned had a tail hook on it, but it'd still be fun to try.
I think in the sim they put the tail hook on the 172. So I got in there and did one backcountry landing where you can't see the runway until you come around a bend and you're on short final. Very interesting. And
that's a lot like the runway down at the fun flying zone when you got to land to the west on that. You might see the runway from a mile out, but then when you get down to approach altitude to fit in with the arrivals to 36 and avoid their approach, you can't see any of that runway until you start to make that last 90 degrees to line up with it, and then boom, there it is.
That's because of the tree line.
It keeps you on your toes.
Oh yeah. Then the other scenario I did in the sim with Rob was a narrow runway, narrow and long, 30 feet wide, 4,000 feet long, with water at the threshold, or that is, on the other side of a river.
Brown County Airport in Kansas, 2,500 feet by 30.
And so there's that illusion that you get from a long, narrow runway of it being bigger than it actually is, and you being higher than you ought to be. And with the water right there, it's very hard to judge.
Water at either end of the runway can always kind of make the perception different, and you throw night into that, and the water is a big black hole. There's no lights out there, and suddenly it's a whole different ballgame.
You also might find a little sinkhole sometimes when you're approaching a runway over water, or my understanding or my recollection, I should say, is the water will absorb heat during the day, creating a sink, and generate heat in the evenings, generating lift. So you have to be cognizant of the way the terrain will interact with your airplane.
And of course, in the Pilot Proficiency Center Redbird Sims, the instructor can mess with the crosswind, the weather conditions, whatever, and so you never know quite what you're going to get.
Instructors are like that, aren't they?
That points out the value of practice, and best way to become and stay a proficient pilot is to fly. If you can't get it in for real, some sim time like that can help knock the rust off the edges, but there's no substitute for the real deal.
Absolutely. I had a chance to catch up with Rob Mark of the Jetwine blog, who's been helping out in the Pilot Proficiency Center here at Oshkosh. So Rob, you've been volunteering in the Pilot Proficiency Center this week, where EAA has enabled pilots to try some simulations on the Redbird simulator device in both VFR and IFR scenarios. And I think you were working VFR, is that right?
Yeah, I started out in VFR because I hadn't worked with the Redbirds before. I'd never actually worked up here at the Proficiency Center, and I didn't want to look like a complete idiot not knowing what I was doing. So I thought, how hard could VFR be? but the scenarios were very challenging on the VFR side. And I think that was actually what they were designed for, because we weren't trying to overwhelm people. The goal was to try to get people to think about what they should be thinking about when they're flying. And the nice thing is that if it doesn't work out the way we wanted it to, you can hit pause and say, hey, Jim, let's do that over again, and maybe what would you have done different the second time? And that's actually been the benefit.
And we know that there are 12 simulator stations set up. You can't set up 100, but you've got many, many pilots here. And did you find it to be a little bit busy this week?
I couldn't believe how busy I was. I mean, I had to raise my hand to go to the bathroom. And, seriously, and we had people of all categories. I had one fellow, I think, that was probably an 800-hour commercial pilot working on his CFI, and he was kind of surprised at the fact that it didn't all work out exactly the way he thought it would the first time. So he learned a few things. I had somebody yesterday, I had a young girl yesterday that was going to be a senior in high school that had never flown in her life. And we did the basic VFR Fisk arrival into Oshkosh, and by the time she was done in her hour, she was landing the airplane, and she just thought that was the coolest thing in the whole world.
That's such a great thing to get somebody introduced to it, and to give them the confidence to know that they could go out there and do this, because people think pilots are amazing, and we are. But it's nice to reassure the other folks that they could do it too. There were several scenarios, both in the IFR and the VFR side, and I think in the VFR there were 6 different scenarios about that. And each one presented a different challenge. One was a short runway, one was a narrow runway, one was a aircraft carrier. Was any one of them a particular favorite?
Of the airport?
Actually, I would have to tell you that I think the mountain approach was my favorite, and only because it started to teach people things that they would just never have thought about if they were flatlanders like me. The airport that we were landing at was at 5,000 feet MSL, and when we turned the simulator over to you, I think you and I did that one, Jim.
Right. We did that one twice, in fact, because it takes 2 times to get the feel for it.
That's right, and what we learned is that if you waited, because you couldn't see the airport when the scenario began, you had to kind of weave your way around some pretty high hills. And if you waited until you saw the grass runway to start getting configured, even the 172, about the only way to get down would be a sort of a dive bomber approach, and 2,500 foot rate coming down a mile from the airport was not such a good idea.
And for those folks who are out there saying, well, why didn't you just do a pretty steep slip as soon as you saw the runway? Or the rest of you say, why didn't you just go around once around the pattern? Well, in terms of the steep slip, as you say, you're going to pick up a little speed. It's going to be hard to judge those trees at the threshold. And if you're a good backcountry pilot, you might be able to do it. But we talked about going around. And there's no traffic pattern at this airport because it's in a narrow canyon. As I recall, if you go around, you're going to go fly down the valley, out into the country, do another cross country to come back around and try it again.
Well, it's funny because the young lady that was learning to fly, that it was her first session yesterday, we actually did that. We took off from that strip, and I just had her fly out through the canyon, and we were flying for a long time before we ever climbed high enough to go over the top of the hill. Well, they were mountains. I mean, I think we were up to 10,000 feet by the time. So how you would have gotten back in there if you did go around, I have no idea.
On my first attempt, I was actually a little too low. You'd warned me that the airport comes up on you quickly, so I overcompensated, chopped the power, and ended up dragging it in, narrowly missing a tree on final.
Well, the graphics on these simulators are really, really good. And trust me, when you see the trees and the hills, you think they're really trees and hills. And we're not looking at one screen. We have 6 screens, so we have wraparound vision. You can see essentially from behind the left wing strut on the 172 all the way around to the behind the right. No, I can't say it. Behind the right wing strut. So more than 180 degrees of visibility. It's really good.
I like that on the narrow runway scenario because the simulator scenario starts you off on base with the runway on your left side, and if you're flying Microsoft Flight Sim or X-Plane at home and you only have your one computer monitor, you'd have no idea where the runway is. But with the wraparound vision that Redbird puts in there, of course you say, oh yeah, there it is off on the left. Real deceiving.
Well, Jim, I'm just actually so glad that you came in. And I was sitting there in the sim waiting for the next student, and they said, Rob, there's someone that wants to fly specifically with you. And I thought, who in their right mind would do that? And then there you were, Jim.
If it weren't for doing this podcast and a good reason for doing it, nobody would want to fly with you, Rob.
I know. But listen, it's been a great week here at AirVenture. In fact, I get to go home this afternoon finally after about 6 days. So I'm really glad you took the time to come out and talk about this a little bit, Jim.
I'm really glad that I had the opportunity to catch up with you and that you're willing to, even though you do work for that other podcast, Airplane Geeks, which we love, we're so glad to have you as a guest on Uncontrolled Airspace, Rob. And it's always good to see you. We see you here at Oshkosh every year, and just a terrific opportunity to catch up.
And that's because I'm basically uncontrolled at heart.
And with that, we'll say thanks, Rob, and we'll see you next time. Some of the other things we've seen anything else we've seen today, yesterday, that come to mind? The Wright Flyer, the B-50, anything stick out that you guys didn't cover in some of the other dailies?
I think we talked about the Harriers yesterday, and yesterday's daily. But anything specific? No, it's just another wonderful year at AirVenture. The weather's cooperated, crowds are big, the vendors are happy.
No wind at Asheville.
Another great show. Another set of congratulations to EAA.
It's going to be another good afternoon air show. I can't quote you what's on the list, but we got Patty Wagstaff back this year in a completely different extra, a 330 XL, I believe it is. It's a two-seater.
Variable at 4.
With the same capabilities and the same performance as the extra 300 single-seater. And since she's got a new line of work where she's teaching upset recovery and aerobatics,
I think they have the best
comes in handy.
landing.
But the fact that it's also capable of letting her replicate
16.
some of the unique maneuvers that she did in the single-seater is what really turned the corner for her. So
her show,
prevailing winds.
Her show is very distinctive when you're in the campground and you're watching the air show at a distance and you don't hear the announcer necessarily. You can tell when Patty's flying. She's got a distinctive act.
And she's cut her hair a little shorter, so the new video won't show that.
I could pick
those
them,
curly locks she used to have flying up and down and sideways as she did it.
Leaving
that
and
really
coming,
always drove home
I could pick up
what in the
departure
cockpit
and
camera
approach
what was going on
50 miles out.
in cockpit camera. Easy for me to say.
Folks, you don't get reporting
really
like
good.
that on other news media.
Or
right.
Whatever.
All right, I think we can tie a ribbon around this one. This has been Uncontrolled Airspace, episode 384, Foxtrot.
We'll see y'all around the grounds.
Fly safe.
Bye now.
But I didn't get the weather until I was 20 or 25 miles out.
Huh.
But my guess is you would be able to pick up approach 124.65 by the time we get to past Morganton. That little patch changes it.
24 Alpha, contact Atlanta Center 125.15, 2515, good day. 12515, 54 Alpha. You have a good day.
Changes its pixels, so it's active, but it doesn't seem to be moving anyplace. That's Asheville, even this far out. That's over 50 nautical miles.
I have to drop it down. Let's see. One 10.5. Well, let's see what 16 is. 112 got something. One 10.9. Three, 4, 5. That storm's not moving at all. If we get any downbursts here. Somebody just must be using 1-6 because somebody's just taking off that direction.
Yep.
United 516. United 516, Air Shuttle 3766, looking for you.
Where did that come from?
United 516, if you can hear, contact center at 2457.
Anybody got shiplet?
Should be right over our nose.
Over there.
Right down at the end of that noodle of water. Shiloh down there.
Yep.
Well, we ought to pick up ATIS pretty soon.
Went down too low.
I guess.
Their lake is down too. Don't they have the new island there?
Yeah, it looks like it.
Variability 0.
United 516, this is Wisconsin 3834 transmitting on guard. United 516.
Approach runway 16 in use. Advise on initial contact. You have Charlie. Charlie, this information, Charlie 2154 Zulu. Wind variable at 4, visibility 10, sky clear, temperature 27, dew point 13, altimeter 3017. Use caution on final. Closed runway under construction west of runway 3416. Visual approach runway 16 in use. Advise on initial contact. You have Charlie.
I don't see that giant storm over there. Maybe it's just too hazy.
Would be somewhere out there, right?
Yeah. I do see
Asheville
some
approach, Jet 587.
high clouds over there.
With 80's
Maybe
Charlie.
that's the top of it.
And those
587 Asheville.
mountains disappear.
3017, you can expect the visual approach runway 16. Ident.
Visual for 16, there's the identic Jet 587.
Jet 587 is radar contact about 3.5 southeast of Shiloh over 10,000. Maintain 6,000.
Send to 6,000, Jet 587.
Asheville approach, jet 587, we have the field at sight.
Jet 587, cleared visual approach runway 16, left downwind entry.
Okay, left downwind entry for 16, and we're cleared to land 16.
You're cleared for the approach. You can contact Tower 21-1. He'll have the clearance to land.
I meant to say cleared for the approach. Sorry about that. 587, talk.
No problem.
Asheville approach, Skylane 1822 Charlie.
Skylane calling Asheville approach, remain clear of the Class C airspace, and say it again, please.
Skylane 1822 Charlie, we're 20 miles to the northeast, inbound for landing.
Skylane 22 Charlie, squawk 0234, say altitude.
0234, and we're at 4,500, 22 Charlie.
This is 22 Charlie, roger, maintain your current altitude or above, so advised. It'll help me get you in radar a lot sooner. And until I pick you up in radar, remain clear of the Class C airspace.
22 Charlie, maintain 4,500 and maintain clear of this airspace until you pick me up. Oh, we got a new guy there?
I don't know. Yeah, I got that weather moving north now. Yeah, you do too.
I think they have an observatory on top of their house. They have a round dome with a kind of opening.
Haven't seen that before.
22 Charlie, ident.
Ident 22 Charlie. And we have information, Charlie.
Thank you. 22 Charlie, radar contact 10 miles east-northeast of the Asheville Airport at 4,500. Maintain VFR of you have the airfield in sight.
Maintain VFR, and we'll let you know when we see the airport. 22 Charlie. Know where it is, but I don't even see the towers right now.
Asheville, Twin Cessna 300, Papa Mike 10,000.
This is 300, Papa Mike, Asheville approach, Asheville, number 3017.
3017.
Right over there. There's the towers. I was going to say that you have to go over that hump to see the towers.
I see it. There's the end of the runway.
Yep.
Asheville approach, Charlie, 1822 Charlie has the airport in sight.
22 Charlie, thank you. Near the west base runway 16, and just be advised you have possible traffic to your 10 to 11 o'clock and 2 miles. Maneuvering altitude indicates 3,400.
22 Charlie left traffic for 16, and we're looking for the traffic.
We got it right there.
And we have the traffic in sight.
22 Charlie, thank you. In contact tower 121.1.
Is that a biplane?
Yeah, I'll bet you that's Honeycutt.
Can you fly the plane for a second?
Sure.
Alrighty.
Was it a red and white one?
What?
Was it red and white?
Yeah.
Okay, that's Honeycutt.
There's another one out there too. Two of them.
So a total of 3 or a total of 2? Okay.
3 if you count us.
Was the other one a baby ace? Low wing home build?
It did look like a single wing.
Yeah. That's probably Keith's airplane. It has the 150 by us. Did he clear us to land?
No. I gotta go after tower scaling 1822 Charlie.
1822 Charlie, Asheville, tower wind 0907, runway 16, clear to land.
Clear to land 1622 Charlie. Let's see, that'd be this one. 10 point, I forgot which one was which now. We're not going to be lined up on anyway. A little bit shorter than the other one.
Yeah, it's 7,000 feet.
3959.
Talking to us.
3959, I can give them a call and see if they have anything. What time are you thinking? 3959, let me give them a shout and see if I can get you moved up to about a, say, 4 time. That give you enough time to get pushed, get ready, and get going? Let me give them a shout. I'll be back with you in a minute. 22 Charlie, get you one off this frequency to the ramp.
There's frequency to the ramp, 22 Charlie.
What are you pointing at?
Standby or 1200 or...
Okay. But these hottest days, you're supposed to leave your transponder running until you're parked, until you're off of movement area.
Where do you see that in some book?
3959, unfortunately there's not much of a move up. We're looking at 49 for a wheels up now. That's the best they got.
In the, well, when you go into any TFR area, have to, and I can't remember now who said that they are looking for it to be, it obviously isn't a rule, but it's acceptable to have something on until you're off the movement area, which means once we get on this, it's okay to shut it off.
Yeah.
So that they, and also, when they talk about on the ground planes running into each other. At a lot of the big airports want you to keep it on.